Hello, everyone, and welcome to Elephino Open number 26. I am Elephino, and I am once again joined by my good friend Jump. What's going on today, bud?
It's going well. We've seen a lot of Hearthstone today. Xfinity had their tournament. One Nation of Gamers has been playing. We've seen all the big pros running their constructed as well. So why not end your glorious Sunday with some Elephino Open?
Yep, It's been pretty fun. If you guys didn't get to check those out, yeah, definitely, as Jump pointed out, check out the VODs for some of those. You can see a lot of the top tier players going at it and pick up some hints, or whatnot from their play. But in case this is your first Elephino Open, what we do here is we have a 256 player open tournament. So that means anybody can sign up. It's completely free, and they play through a single elimination tournament. All rounds are best of 5 conquest with a ban. You want to go over that, Jump, real quick? What that means? Best of 5 conquest with a ban.
Yeah. So the way that this is going to work is you're going to be bringing 4 different decks, and it is a best 3 out of 5. Of those 4 decks that you bring, one of those will get banned away. So this is kind of where you can start to create a little bit of competitive advantage for yourself against your opponent, because you have that opportunity and that option to kind of eliminate a deck that's kind of giving you trouble. If you're kind of worried about the Reno lock, or that aggro shaman is just not something you want to see, you can take that off the table and kind of hopefully increase your chances accordingly.
Yeah, Shaman's a very popular ban right now. I see in a lot of tournaments. It was not banned here in this first round, though. But anyway, the first match we have going on for you today will be the first semifinals match, which will be between GC Birth and Lynx. So they will be going on first, and then following that, we will have Combustible versus Micros. And then the winners of both of these semifinals matches will obviously clash head-to-head in the championship match, where we will crown the victor of Elephino Open number 26. While that's displayed on your screen right now. Before we get into this first match, Jump, can you go over their lineups for us?
Yeah, so we're going to have GC taking up the Hunter, the Shaman, and the Warlock. His Warrior was what was banned away. And then Lynx is going to have the Rogue, the Shaman, and the Warlock with his Warrior banned away. So the Shaman Warlock being a consistency between both of these teams. However, we have seen a lot of different archetypes between both of these decks. We've got the Zoo as well as the Reno being the 2 most popular. The mid-range Shaman with the totems, as well as the aggro Shaman, of course, definitely being something to be seen. So I just want to see kind of what these 2 players are really going to bring as far as varying styles coming into this setup.
Yeah, based off their lineups, they look to be pretty similar. I would imagine they're both going to be fairly aggressive. Kind of a tell from the Shaman and the Warlock. They could be mid range, but I got a feeling we're going to see some Zoo Warlock action from at least one of the players here.
Yeah, without a doubt. Zoo definitely taking up a big setup with a lot of these players. However, in competitive play, we have seen Zoo kind of fall off a little bit, because there's a lot of easy techs in a lot of these other decks where the Zoo gets combated very easily. You think about Shaman and the Lightning Storm, a very easy fan of knives, because in the Zoo these days, with the meta that we're at, we see a lot of those 1 health minions just to really flood the board and try to get as much presence as possible. So the Warlock, while you do have that Zoo definitely on the top of these ladder style competitions, I wouldn't be surprised if a Reno lock does decide to come out.
Yeah, we'll have to wait a little bit to find out some information on that, though, because in game number 1, we got Lynx on the bottom of your screen opening up with Shaman, and GC on the top of your screen opening up with the Hunter here. So they do both look to be fairly aggressive, at least from the get-go here.
Yeah, I mean, we see a Leopard Gnome already in the hand of... We already see a Leopard Gnome in the hand of GCT, kind of just being like, well, all right, let's see what you're going to throw into there. The Snake Trap as well. So we might actually see a little bit of the Face Hunter popped up here by GC. And then Lynx, though, he going with what we've come to see from all of these Shamans. It was a great start by the Ardent Squire, being able to have that as your 1-drop. And though we do see immediately a huge rebuttal. Turn 2, not very often are you assuming that is going to be a Snake Trap. as Lynx is most definitely going to want to trade this just because of the effectiveness with the Divine Shield.
Sure.
However, he's going to get quite the surprise if that Snake Trap dude does decide to go down.
Yeah, that could be the read you're making as Lynx right here. You're definitely, why did he play that trap so quickly when this trade is so good? So you might be expecting a Snake Trap here, or even Bear Trap here, maybe trying to bait him out at the snake so you go face, and then the bear pops out, which could punish him pretty good. But he does decide to tack in, which does proc the snakes, and that's good for GC.
It is indeed, and what's going to be even better for this follow-up is not only do you have the Direwolf Alpha to throw there, but you have the Abusive Sergeant. So you're going to be able to clear off that Totem Golem very effectively, as well as that Ardent Squire if you so choose. Doesn't look like he wants to do it though, wants to get off as much face damage because as it stands with 2 mana, there's really not much that Lynx is going to be able to do. We can see from his hand, he's going to be able to clear off that Direwolf Alpha if he so chooses. He does have the Rockbiter in hand, but outside of that, I mean, what does that really develop you for a board? You can trade the Argent Squire into the 2/1 of the Abusive Sergeant just to eliminate some damage, but you're still left with those 2/1/1s. And so right from the get-go, this kind of miscalculation by Lynx, not necessarily understanding or more or less getting surprised by the Snake Trap, definitely going to put GC in a much better spot.
Yeah, he had a 50-50 there, like I was talking about. So he played around Bear Trap, which was a very good call by him. It could have been Bear, that would have punished him even more so, I think, than the 1/1s at that time, or maybe just as equally. But he was pretty much damned if you do, damned if you don't on that one. So he had to make a judgment call. Didn't quite work out for him, but it looks like he might be able to recover with things from below here and trade off into those 1/1s. That'll really set him up for the future. Slows down. He's probably got the read that GC is running more of an aggressive hunter. So what he wants to do is just slow down that pressure, wait until he can transition to the mid to late game, and that's as long as he can hold out that long, that's his plan. That's how he wins this game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if his hesitation there, though, of him kind of worrying about the response that's actually going to happen. When you're throwing down that 5/5 and you know that there are going to be 2 beasts on the board, you kind of have to worry and wonder and say, okay, is there a chance, or what are the chances of him actually having that kill command in? Because another option that Lynx could have had is to just stop the tempo and decide to hex at 3/3. He does decide to go for a little bit more of the safe play, per se, without trying to overcommit with that thing from below. It does get answered immediately by that kill command, but now with a very lucky roll 2 times in a row with the Flame Tongue and the Stone Claw, that's going to give a little bit of trouble for GC. But again, just the draws that he's had, nothing has gone wrong thus far for this hunter, as he's had an answer to these shamans every single time something happens. And this is kind of the best part about it, if you are a hunter player that is able to get off the board, because Shaman, much like Zulok in a sense of, if they're not able to maintain that board control early, they're using their hands, they're using their deck the entirety of the game just to play catch up. And we all know what happens when a hunter is able to get ahead because of the cards that they have at their disposal. And that's exactly what happened here. Lynx fell behind. He had an attempt to make something happen, but it was just response after response there by that hunter from GC, and so he is going to be able to take down Lynx and take up that 0-1, or that 1-0, should I say.
Yeah, really frustrating for Lynx there. He knew that the hunter player only had a couple cards in hand, and yet he always seemed to have the exact answer that he needed at the time, so that was probably a little bit frustrating from him. But we'll see if he's able to bounce back here in game number 2, as he's going to switch to the Warlock. And GC obviously, since he won, and this is Conquest format, he's going to switch to that Shaman.
Yeah, and so now we kind of see something change that we haven't seen as much happen here in the Elephino Open. We generally see these players, when they do decide to, or when they do end up losing their first set, they kind of stick with the same class and kind of, okay, you know, shame on me, that kind of happened. Let's try again and see what we can do. So that's generally the common theme that we've seen. However, from Lynx, he does not want to deal with anything else. He kind of wants to put the Shaman on the back burner for now, and might have a little bit more of a confidence boost, or hope for a confidence boost here with this Zoo. And as we can see, he gets a very solid start. He does have the Direwolf as well as the Peddler in hand to get something done, but yet again, we're going to have a little bit of setup here by GC. Doesn't have too much to curve out for turn 3, is forcing himself to use that Rockbiter just to clear away that 1/3, but we all know that lovely 4 mana 7/7 in the Flame Wreath Faceless is going to be available for him in a couple terms, but without a real heavy 3-drop, this is going to be a solid state of board control here by Lynx. Being able to have that Peddler, he pulls a Soulfire actually, which is going to be very helpful against these bigger bodies.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting for GC if he throws down his four drop. He gets overloaded, in which case he cannot play the Doomhammer on turn 5. So it'll be interesting to see what he does here. I think he's probably going to go with the depending on what he picks up. I guess you would play the minion in that scenario, just because otherwise you're going to get too overwhelmed on the board. But I wouldn't be surprised to see him forego it because of the strength of Doomhammer, wanting to establish that as quickly as he can and have the immediate impact of the weapon clearing off these 2 health minions on the following turn.
And you're not that worried about as much either. Yes, there is kind of the argument of, okay, well, you do have that Knife Juggler available, so you can kind of try to get yourself a trade, throw down the Finley to get something else to happen. However, he goes completely against all our thought. He just needs the body at this point in time. He looks at the state of the board and he says, I need to find some way to make sure that I don't get behind in this matchup, because if I do, that's when things are really going to start to struggle for me. So he throws down the 7/7 body. However, Lynx is going to have a fantastic set of options to be able to go with this. He did go ahead and throw down the Alpha just to see where the juggle landed. Now is kind of the decision of, do I throw down the Soulfire and worry about the 50-50 chance of losing that Ardent Squire, or do I just decide to kind of go for it? He does decide to go for it by that Peddler. RNG works out perfectly in his favor. So now not only is he going to get the Abusive Sergeant to stay, but he's going to be able to use it to get a lot of extra damage. I'm not too sure about the order of that play per se. You could have still thrown down the Abusive Sergeant and then, you know, kind of guaranteed that it happened. But at the same time, it did work out in your favor, and so now you're going to kind of have that establishment of board, because with the overload from the Faceless from the last turn, that Doomhammer's not going to get played. He's not going to have enough mana to play another 7/7. So now he's kind of just forced to Finley here, and this is kind of a rough spot for him to be in overall, because he's just not going to be able to have this. And the longer that this Direwolf Alpha, as well as that Knife Jungler, stay up, the more value they're going to continue to create with the board control that Lynx has been able to establish.
Yeah, and the Shaman appears to be definitely aggro Shaman. We can make the read by the Flame Tongue Totem. Is not generally ran in mid-range. A lot of those other cards are ran in both variations, and it's kind of hard to get the read on them early on. But based off what we can see in his hand and how he's been playing a little bit, it's very unlikely that he's running a Lightning Storm, which is one of the ways that Shaman can come back in that mid-range matchup if they fall behind early to board, or early on the board to Warlock.
Yeah. And so now Lynx is just continuously trying to get up as much pressure as he can. He's not worried about overcommitting onto this because, like you said, if he had the Lightning Storm, he would have used it in a previous turn. So he's perfectly fine with overcommitting onto this board. He knows that he's putting himself closer and closer into lethal range because he's got that Power Overwhelming in his hand. He can kind of use it as a backup to make something happen. And again, we kind of get in a situation where GC is kind of forced to play on the defense. He's able to successfully use that ping that he acquired from Finley earlier. He's now going to have the 7/7 body, but just again, look at the damage that we're going to see coming out of Lynx. He's 1 off of lethal, right? Does he have lethal? 6. Yes, he does have lethal. Okay, so that is going to be lethal for him. I miscounted onto it.
Yeah,
but yeah,
he had a lot of damage.
Yeah, and just like that, it's going to be Lynx evening it up at 1-1. So we questioned, whether or not switching that class was going to be able to prove advantageous for his position, and it looks like it was. Got to something a little more comfortable, was able to have the answers to respond, and GC just didn't have the hand that was really helping him. The overload putting him in a difficult spot, and deciding to throw down that 7/7 really early and kind of stall out the chance of a Doomhammer coming out, that might have been the real tide turner on whether or not this game went in his favor.
Yeah, it was definitely a judgment call. He didn't really have any clear, so he had to hope that he could race him down, maybe. That was his thought in that play. Is if he puts the 7/7 on board, I'm going to force my opponent to have to trade into me, and if he doesn't, then I can initiate the race with 7 damage hitting me in the face. But if that was his plan, it didn't work out for him because of the amount of pressure that Lynx was able to maintain.
Yeah, and so now we've got the Shaman matchup, the Golden Shaman. Which one will come out on top is the question both of these both of these players are wanting to ask. And so now it was a very standard tunnel trog for Lynx, but the decision is coming up for for GC here. He can either decide to throw down his own Tunnel Trog, just to have that and I guess try to contest something. But then there's also the option of either throwing down the Finley to try to get a hero power to kind of help yourself out, or decide to Lightning Bolt that Tunnel Trog down. He does decide to do both the former and the latter. Wants to make sure to eliminate that Tunnel Trog from the board, so he's actually going to use the coin to his advantage, but that's going to be an immediate response by another one, as well as Lynx's own version of clear with that Rockbiter weapon. But using all of those resources early, with as well as that 5 and 6 mana cards in his hand, he's kind of stalled out for a couple turns, unless he picks something good off the top.
I'm really surprised to see the thing from below from GC. He looked to be more of the aggressive shaman last game. I would not have expected to see that in there. A lot of times you're not able to use your hero power to generate totems as the aggro shaman, especially here since he's already lost it with the draw. So that could be a very expensive 6-drop if he needs it. So I'm interested to see. Obviously, he enjoys having that card at his disposal, so he finds a lot of value in it. It's just not typically seen in aggro shaman. So kind of an interesting tech choice.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. There's still a lot of cards of his deck that we haven't seen. So I have a feeling that there might be a couple, that there potentially might be like a Tuskar or something out there that might help that thing from below. But you're right, we're not used to seeing this in that aggro shaman because he doesn't have time to really make thing from below actually valuable. And especially seeing this Argent Squire off the top as well, that kind of just tells you that it's going to be an aggro shaman through and through. So I'm not too sure. However, it does kind of sit well as far as your curve of your actual deck list. So there is a chance of, okay, if things are getting really tough, this could kind of hopefully stall out till I draw something better off the top. But I'm not too sure how well it is going to work out. We can see it sitting at 5 cost right now. So we might have to just, I guess, hopefully wait and see if it is going to gain some value. Seeing the deck or the cards that he has in his hand, it most certainly is. However, at the same time, kind of, at what cost is this going to give you? Because he throws this down for 5 mana. So that's a 5 mana 5/5, not the most efficient as far as statistics go. And as easily it gets countered by this Lynx Heck, GC now kind of put on the back foot on some things.
Yeah, he was forced he was probably going to hex the Totem Golem if that didn't come out, and then Lynx was really happy to see that come out. He's like, oh, an even better hex target. It allows me to keep going face with my my Doomhammer. I'm able to clear off one of your taunts and just continue pushing pressure here. Even though he's not the aggressive shaman, it's it still feels good to hit your opponent in the face with Doomhammer whenever you can.
Yeah. And I mean that's kind of the struggle of power that both of these shamans have been playing through the entire game, and that's kind of the way the matchup works out. It's whoever can maintain that board control and ensure that they have the stickiest minions possible, and we kind of can see the effect of that here in this next turn. The very lucky life tap into the Feral Spirit comes out for GC, and now you kind of have a questioning of, all right, what are we actually going to do to combat this? Because you either take 4 damage to the face with the Doomhammer and then throw down the Fire Elemental as well to try to get something done, but you're already at 18 health. It'll throw you down to 14. You know that there's probably something scary in GC's hand, as well as 4 damage, or 4 damage, 6 damage on board. So you're kind of in a struggle with the way that your board is. So he just decides to throw down some minions onto the board just to try to get some kind of presence, but with only that Stoneclaw being there as the protection, there's going to be a lot of damage. 10 damage now, potentially to the face of Lynx. I wouldn't be surprised if he does try to clear out that Totem Golem, but at the same time, though, that's a lot of damage that he's going to be putting on his enemy.
Yeah, I think I would have liked the Fire Elemental there simply because of the impact that it had on the board.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
You've got to be a little bit scared of things like Bloodlust from Aggro Shaman, and using that Fire Elemental not only is a big body on your board that's difficult for them to clear, but it has the immediate impact of clearing one off, and I just think it would have set himself up a little bit, but he was perhaps a little bit greedier with it because he saw it as his way to win, and he wanted to flood the board with smaller minions and try to set up some better trades that way. But GC looks like he sniffed it out, and he was making sure that he aggressively cleared as well.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's a 6/5 body, and you can see with the minions that were on board, it's going to force at least possibly a double trade, and so that's kind of a situation that you put yourself in as well. Of okay, I'm gonna force kind of an extra trade. I'm gonna lay a bigger body while clearing another body out. So yeah, I think I would have liked to see that a little bit better. Because now that he throws it down, there were just too many minions on board. It was a very lucky lava burst off the top, and with 6 left, there's nothing Lynx can do. And so he's 0 for 2 on his shaman now, and is just forced to concede because there was just too much going in the favor of GC. So this Shaman really giving Lynx a little bit of trouble. He does still have that Rogue to go to if he so chooses, but with the Warlock, the only deck left for GC, it's kind of a decision for Lynx of which one he wants to do. He does decide to go with the Shaman, so 3 times the charm, hopefully, as he's trying his best to get a win against what it seems to be the Zulok here for GC.
Yeah, he's really going to want that Lightning Storm that we mentioned a couple times, and I haven't seen it in either player's hands at all, so I would assume that Lynx is running it based off his deck. But if he could have gotten that at the end of the last game, it was basically Lightning Storm or bust at the end of the last game, so now it might be that way in this game again, so we'll see if he can pick that up.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised he didn't keep it because he's kind of been having bad luck with some of his draws anyway. So sometimes you see players kind of keep that and, you know, essentially waste a card in their hand for a short time just to make sure that they can get value off of that. But there's also the consideration of whether or not this is actually a Zulok or if this is something of like a Reno. And if you kind of choose the direction of, okay, maybe it's a Reno and it is, then you can have that other option to not keep the Lightning Storm. But now that he's essentially got clear vision that it is going to be a Zoo with both all of these minions, should I say, on the board, now you kind of are sitting and wondering, going, well, maybe I should have kept it. However, we can see from the board that he has already, Lynx has established his presence pretty handily against this GC squad.
Yeah, one of the big arguments for not keeping Lightning Storm is, well, if I keep it, I have the guaranteed answer on turn 3. But if I toss it back, maybe I'm not behind in turn 3 when it gets there, and I don't need it to save me in this matchup. So that's definitely the argument for keeping it or not in here. If I keep it, yeah, it'll save me, but is it enough to save me even at that point?
So Lynx sitting on the 2 mana from the Totem Golem can't really use anything. There isn't really an argument to throw out that Flame Tongue because it's just going to get combated quite easily. So instead, he essentially goes for the effective trades to make something happen. And that's kind of how a lot of this matchup works. Not only is the Zoo always trying to make the most efficient trades and kind of force you into ineffective trading, but when you see kind of this hybrid Shaman that we have coming out of Lynx, that's essentially what they're looking for as well in this matchup. And by doing something of this sort, you're kind of guaranteeing yourself a lot better situation as far as effectiveness of your minions and value of those minions, because I've only seen probably once or twice with these higher level players in competitive play, some of these Zoos actually running a Hellfire. I have seen it, so I can't say that it's ruled out completely, but the chances of that actually showing up are a lot lower than not. So forcing these effective trades and just making sure that you get the most bang for your buck with your minions is definitely something that's going to be on Lynx's mind, especially because he's going to be able to load the board a lot easier with that Tuskar as well as that Feral coming up here for turn 4.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we see GC forcing the trades here, mostly because he had to. Those trades were just too good to pass up. That would have been extremely greedy to go face there. But he is starting to fizzle out a little bit. I know he has that life tap that he's going to have to maybe rely on to keep up with Lynx into the mid to late game, which I expect the Feral Spirits to come out from him and just kind of slow off some of this pressure as well. It sets you up better next turn because you expect to have at least one of them live. If you kill off the Direwolf Alpha, he has to sink 2 minions into there to clear off even one of them. So you're expecting one to survive, and even if both die, then you protected it from your face, and you pretty much have the advantage on board probably going into the next turn.
Yeah, and that's kind of the best part about this is because you can just see this overexertion of board and lack of cards in GC's hand. Every time that he decides to life tap is a win for Lynx, because while this deck does revolve around kind of a hybrid sense, if the Shaman is able to go face, he most certainly is going to want to in every sense of the word. So every time that GC is using that life tap, it's kind of giving you another opportunity to just whittle him down further and further, so you can kind of waste for your big burst turn. So not deciding to go for the Feral Spirit, it was the Tuskar, and it's going to get combated pretty effectively here by GC. And now, and this is kind of where I question using the Tuskar instead of, I understand you don't want the overload, that it's going to give you. But at the same time, like what you mentioned, not only are you protecting your face, but that's a 3 health minion that you have. And at the time, you didn't really have as much on the other side. But now that you have Darkshire as well as that Abusive Sergeant on board, that's enough firepower to burst through the Feral Spirit, considering whatever else is on in the hand of GC. And so as a result, Lynx knows that this probably isn't his best option to throw down the Feral Spirit. So he's going to be forced to Tuskar again and gets a lucky roll on the Flank Tongue Totem, but still, that's going to go down pretty handily. And now, without any minions left in his hand, but a full board to work with, GC definitely looking to be in a good spot here.
Yeah, definitely. If he had gone Feral Spirits there, he would have been looking at... The Dark Peddler would have had to be eliminated as well, so he would have had one less minion to combat last turn. And the Darkshire Councilman wouldn't have had charge with the buffed up. So that pretty much eliminated him from being able to play Feral Spirits the next turn because of that Councilman, and it being able to be buffed up by smaller minions would just chew through one of those Feral Spirits very easily. The smaller minions would have chewed through the other one, so it wouldn't have done very much on that turn. So now it's kind of just stuck in his hand a little bit. He's going to have to use it to save himself here, but it's not going to do as much as I feel it would have on one of those previous turns.
Yeah, and the difficult spot you put yourself in now is you know that there's no way that this thing from below is going to survive. Yes, you're going to have to probably sacrifice a Darkshire, but you still have another Darkshire available to get something. With the Direwolf Alpha coming out, as well as the Sea Giant now.
That's painful.
Oh, yeah, it's very painful because there's not a Hex in the hand of Lynx. He doesn't... Lightning Storm isn't going to clear this off by any means of the word, and so now you make a difficult situation almost impossible here, as Lynx is just finding himself not in the most advantageous of positions, sitting on 14 health with a 7-5 and an 8-8 on the board. GC is rocking and rolling, and that's going to be the concede. There's really not much else you can do. Kind of just have to shrug your shoulders and say, well, you know, I had some opportunities, and I think that game was winnable. I don't think that was a game that was impossible, per se, for Lynx.
Sure.
But it was more of a question of overload, and that's kind of the decision that a lot of shamans have to make these days, is when am I actually going to choose to overload? And kind of the tide turner for that, I believe, was deciding not to use that Feral Spirit and not using that protection and the value of the 3 health minions to be able to force some extra trading into the hands by GC. And so with that, Lynx is going to go down, and that's going to be the win here for GC, making it onto the finals.
Yeah, so congratulations to him. We will see him later on in the championship match. But before that, we will be showing you the second semifinals match of Elephino Open number 26, which will be between Combustible and Micros. So Jumper and I will take a short break while we set that up for you, but don't go away. You don't want to miss it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Elephino Open number 26. I am still Elephino. I am still joined by my good friend Jump. We're going to get ready started. We're going to get ready to get started with the second semifinals match, which will be between Combustible and Micros. If you're just joining us, I'll show you the bracket real quick, and we'll do a quick rundown of what we do. Quickly. So the first semifinals match that we just saw was between GC and Lynx. We saw GC take a 3-1 victory, moving him over into the championship match. So now we will have the second semifinals match between Combustible and Micros. Jump, you want to give us a rundown of their lineups?
Yeah, so Combustible is going to be running the Hunter, the Shaman, and the Warlock. His Warrior was banned, so another Warrior ban coming out. And it's also going to be the Mage, the Shaman, and the Warlock here for Micros with the Rogue banned away. And, we kind of question, why would you actually, if you're Combustible, ban away that Rogue?
Yeah,
There
surprising.
are a lot of different options to deal with it, but at the same time, in these open tournaments, you kind of have to go more for comfort as opposed to what you actually are worried about from your opponent as far as playstyle, because you're going to be playing a lot of different players. No idea who you're going to go up against in these final four matches. So just kind of keeping yourself and keeping your comfort level high is probably what's on the forefront of Combustible's mind as he has decided to ban that Rogue away.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my guess. He doesn't like playing against it. He doesn't feel comfortable playing against it. He's practiced against these other decks, so he's prepared for them. So he's just going to go ahead and ban that out of the way so he doesn't have to worry about it and try his luck with the ones that he's hopefully prepared for and expecting.
Yeah, what I'm excited to see is which mage archetype we're going to see coming out of Micros. Obviously, the tempo mage is something that is kind of consistently seen throughout a lot of these tournaments, especially because, again, with that open setting, it's going to be able to just swing the tide of the game in your favor really quickly. However, I would love to see some kind of freeze mage setup just to change things up and kind of give us a little bit more entertainment as opposed to these 30-second matches that we've been seeing in our first set. Because while we did have 4 games going that far in the series, they were very quick games just due to the style of the decks that all of these players were having.
Yeah, I would kind of make the read. I know Tempo Mage, as you pointed out, is very popular right now, or kind of gaining in popularity again, I should say, as opposed to very popular. But he did ban the Warrior, so that, Warrior's just very strong class and has been for quite a while. So he may be trying to counter Control Warrior, be afraid of that, so we can make the reset as Freeze Mage, or he could just not like playing against Warrior.
Yeah, definitely. And so as we get ready to get into this match, it is going to be Micros taking on Combustible here. In the semifinals, the winner faces GC in the finals, and it does look like Micros is going to be first up with that Shaman going up against that Warlock here for Combustible.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to get a read on Micros and this Shaman. All the cards that he's had are ran in both variations, so it's pretty difficult to tell what he's going to be doing here, so we'll have to get a read on him later on. But Combustible, it definitely looks like he's running a Zoo variation with the Crazed Alchemist.
Something that we've seen very common with a lot of these tournaments. It has been on the decline in the competitive scene, that Reno lock kind of taking hold. These archetypes that have a little bit more control orient to them, taking a little bit of sense outside of that Aggro Shaman in some instances. But overall, like you said, it is going to be that Zoo variant, and without too crazy of a turn here for Micros, it does look like he just wants to throw down that Tunnel Trog, keep things easy, but it's going to get responded immediately by that Flame Imp.
Yeah, maybe a potential little foreshadowing. Definitely has the Crazed Alchemist, which is designed to counter things like Doomsayer especially. So if we are correct in our slight speculation that the mage from Micros is a Freeze Mage, that Crazed Alchemist could come in huge as a tech card for Combustible in that matchup.
Oh, without a doubt. I hope to see how it does decide to pay out. But an interesting thing here, we do see 2 Master of Evolutions in Micros hands. This wasn't something we saw in either of the Shamans in the last series. It has been a card that has been teched in time or another, but oh baby, look at what we have here.
Wow.
Alec here, the Windlord, makes his debut in the Elephino Open. I have not seen him in the 3 weeks I've been here. definitely falling off in the specter of success, I guess you could say, from these shamans. But it is here, and it is roaring proud. I'm not too sure what to think of this now here for Micros.
I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get to run it, though. His hand is really clunky. He's overloaded, so he's not going to be able to do the second Feral Spirit. So he's going to, I guess, hope for a taunt totem here and try to slow down some of the early game pressure from Combustible. But so far, Combustible's just been plowing through all of Micros' threats, and he's kind of starting to run out down there. I mean, until the late game.
Yeah, and this is kind of the struggle that you put yourself in because you didn't have any follow-up for the turn 3 Feral Spirit. You're kind of just forced to essentially give up your turn 4 because you have yeah, sure, you get a Spell Totem down, you stop 2 damage to the face, but how much is that actually going to help you? Because now Combustible is able to throw down the Dark Peddler. You can see in his hand, even if, say, by some fluke of a chance, Micros wants to run a Lightning Storm this setup, Combustible is going to be able to flood the board right back up to where he wants. You do have 3 taunts that are going to come up that's going to kind of put a damper on Combustible's face train, but at the same time, look at the amount of board responses that he has. He still has that Abusive Sergeant in hand to be able to deal with at least one of them, can throw down the Mortal Coil for another, and this is just going to be a very effective set of trades, as well as a set of card draw here for Combustible.
Yeah, he has a surprising amount of cards for being a Zoo variation here on turn 5 for him. Usually they don't have that large of a hand, but as you pointed out, he was able to deal with those minions from Micros very effectively and not having to extend onto the board. So he was allowed to play around things like Lightning Storm. So that was really impressive from him.
Yeah, and now Micros is put in a difficult spot. This is 2 turns in a row where he lays down the Feral Spirit, and turn comes about, all right, what am I going to do? And in this instance, the only thing you can do is try to throw something just to stop the damage going to your face. Obviously, that Manatide Totem is going to get some effectiveness because it does draw at least 1 card, and you're going to get something from there as well as a Defined Shield from Ardent Squire. But at the same time, look at what you're going to have being able to be built up from Micros. Now, he did top deck that Knife Juggler, so the Knife Juggler can come down if he wants to get something done. You've also got Gormok if you have a choice. Doesn't decide to do that, actually, as he does instead decide to just tap just to try to get a little bit more options onto things. But now, with enough 1-drops to try to get something down, not only is he going to be continuously building this Darkshire up, but he's also going to be able to get some effective, hopefully, should I say, effective juggles here by this Knife Juggler. So a great job to just continue to apply the board, and outside of this thing from below that you see coming potentially from Micros, there's really not much he can do to just stop this overwhelming board that Combustible is able to create.
Oh yeah, that's definitely going to have to come out from him to slow that down. It looks like either Combustible has made the read that Micros doesn't have a Lightning Storm, or he's trying to bait it out to a board that's not super resilient. He'd be left with a couple of minions, but he'd have the refill on the turn afterwards to come back from it. So it's not really a huge deal if Micros does have it. So maybe he's trying to get it out here, come back with the refill, or just, like I said, he doesn't have it. So I'm going to go all in.
Yeah, and so what do we get? All right, so we get a 3-2. So something good comes out of this, but at the same time, you're just continuously putting yourself on the reactive, and that's something that Shaman really struggles against. Going against something like this in this Zuluk is both of these decks rely on getting ahead early and getting some kind of board control, and due to 2 immediate responses to both of the taunts in the Feral Spirits that Micros threw out, Combustible has just continuously been able to throw something out. Now, this deck, or this can kind of get nullified a little bit by a Lightning Storm, but at this point, we're not even sure if he does decide, if he is running it. This is kind of a control Shaman, a little bit more of the aspect. We did see, we did see some minions through the mulligans, as well as what we've seen from the Joust, that there is options that this does kind of throw more towards the control side, especially with the finisher, I guess you could say, in Alec here. But at the same time, like, what are you doing, and what are you putting yourself into? Because now you're at 18 health. All of the minions are essentially donezo when it comes for your own board control. There's a 7-5 and a 4-4 on the board, which is a very amicable amount. And so, you look in the situation of, all right, what do I have left available? I mean, you can throw down the Alec here to get some kind of a clear, potentially, I don't know, on the Voidwalker and the Knife Juggler, but that's going to get cleared away immediately, and you're kind of done for at this point in time because there's so much burst still sitting in the hand of Combustible. So